Joyce and I finally had time to visit the Danbury Quarter Cemetery a few times on Sundays, towards the end of last summer and the beginning of this summer. And as you remember, a few weeks ago, I read out the names of 6 Revolutionary War veterans that are buried in that cemetery. There's also one other Revolutionary soldier buried in a different cemetery in town, and we should be quite proud of that. I took plenty of pictures, but not enough, one of which you will see tonight. There, of course, is hope for the preservation of this town cemetery. Danbury Quarter was once a more active section of Winchester, around 1750 or so. The iron mine, one is thought to have been directly across the street from the cemetery, was thought to be not very productive. At some point, most of the inhabitants received land grants elsewhere, and many residents from Danbury Quarter headed for Vernon, New York, where they established a town similar to Winchester. Once you know the way to the cemetery, there are no signs, so after some abortive efforts, interested friends volunteered to show me the way to the cemetery. It was not that hard to traverse the dirt road to the site, but it's a tough road, depending on your vehicle. 4-wheel drive helps. You may have to walk a bit at times, but it is a pleasant walk this time of year. It's kind of wet down there because it's situated right in the middle of wetlands down there. We did a slight bit of cleanup before heading home. The town has improved the road since then, and we noticed the improvement when we took another trip a week or two ago. The town maintains the road and the cemetery to some degree. The cemetery is in better shape for its age than I expected, but still in need of attention and maybe some restoration. Many of the tombstones, as you can probably see in the picture, are broken and tilted, most likely by falling trees and some of the reputed vandalism that happens over the years, and some other tombstones are propped up by stones. And many, because of their age, lichens and other things are hard to read. There are also former residents buried under boulders, as headstones were expensive and many could not afford them. The Winchester Center Historical Association does have a list of names of those known to be buried in the cemetery, and are in search of more. If you know anybody who's buried there that they don't have on their list, they would like to know that. Several Revolutionary and Civil War veterans are buried there, and it is rumored that an Indian princess is buried there, but investigation has proved this rumor false. And now remember, my Indian name that I got in Kansas when I was amongst the Indians out there is He Who Flies by Instruments. I've talked about that last year on the program. The grass at the cemetery needs a bit more attention, and I'm told that Mr. Griswold, a volunteer, does take care of the grass in the summertime. Some trees have to come down and fallen trees removed. The road needs fill in some washed down but not washed out sections. A lot of that work has been done recently by the town garage. The tombstones can be restored at some cost, and some investigation into this subject with experts has been started by a former commission and the town historian, Dr. Benjamin Thomas. Plenty of work can be done by volunteers, cleaning the lichens off of the stones with a brush and some cleaning fluid, removing fallen trees, and cutting down and removing at least one tree. We must also deal with the damage done by continual vandalism, if practical. Dr. Benjamin Thomas is progressing with the establishment of his new requested commission and has several people interested. He has prepared a list of activities for the commission to pursue, and more volunteers will always help. Contact the Winchester Center Historical Association if you want to help. And again, I was down there a couple weeks ago, and the town has done a wonderful job getting that Grantville Road in good shape. They put down a lot of stone dust, and they've cleared fallen trees and things like that. So you can drive right to the cemetery now if you have a reasonable automobile, preferably four-wheel drive. So with that, I will now go to the agenda for this evening. You will see the selectmen up and back of me most of the meeting tonight because I'm going to be talking about the selectmen for most of the meeting. Now we're going to talk about the November election, Pearson OCR progress, upwards pressure, 2008-2009 budget, and that's going to be most of the meeting tonight here because there was a meeting of the selectmen last night. I went to it, and I've got a lot to say about it. You can see it repeated on television, Channel 13, 9 a.m. on Saturday morning, Channel 13. It only lasts roughly 40 minutes or so, not too long, so it won't take a lot of your time. And if others want to see it, record it, then you can show it to them. And then upwards pressure on the 2009 to 2010 budget if we indeed get that far. Now, the 2009 local election, I first want to correct something from last week. Last week I said I didn't know the affiliations of the 4 constables, and the town clerk did send them to me. There are now 2 Winston Independent Party members, and there are 2 Democrat members. So we have 4 constables, 2 Independent Party members, and 2 Democrat members. They will be up for a re-election in November. If they run again, if not, we'll have some new constables. If you want to know what the constables do, you just read the charter. You can get a copy of one down at the town hall, free. It's a white with a blue logo on it, and I would advise everybody to have one in their house. So the election day this year will be November 3rd, 2009, the first Tuesday in November. The selectmen and the Board of Education people and the constables will all be sworn in on the 4th by 10 in the morning or so. Days to the election remaining, 220 days. Weeks to the election, 14.5. And months to the election, 4.25. So we're moving, and we're going to get there sooner than you think. The final program, Planning for Success, in this format anyway, will be 10/28/09. I am toying with some other monthly ideas, or perhaps 2 year ideas for next year, but I'm not sure whether I'm going to be able to do anything there or not. But a weekly program, it will not be. Pearson OCR progress. Contract on the OCR work begins tomorrow, the 25th of June, as planned, when the school is empty. And I haven't heard any differently, so I'm pretty well assuming it's going to be tomorrow, not within a few days. Planned substantial completion date will be August 21st, 2009. A fine of $1,000 per day for anyone not complete will be imposed on the vendors. The latest possible finish date will be October 1st, 2009 for any incidental things left over from the substantial completion date, if any. And this is very important for this evening's program because there was a lot of confusion at the selectmen meeting because 1 or 2 people didn't understand this Pearson OCR contract because they hadn't read it. But we're projected here to be greatly under budget and to save quite a bit of money on what we thought it was going to be cost to do this work. And part of that is because of the recession. The recession has enabled us to get in some very low bids to do the work, and that's very important for us because it might help our fund balance out a little bit. We'll talk about that tonight. Now I'm going to talk about, for most of the program, on this next subject, which is upwards pressure on this year's budget, 2008-2009. The fiscal year ends at the end of June. So July 1st will be the new fiscal year, 09-10. So we're going to talk tonight about the pressures we still have here because of the rough time we had with this year's budget and the new personnel, a new town manager, a new group of selectmen over the last year and a half here. And we've also had this economy problems all over the place, and that has affected us. There are several factors that are affecting this year's budget and our ability to come in on budget. First, we're getting less revenue than planned. As of June 11th, 2009, the estimate was $126,700 less revenue than we had anticipated when we did the budget. Now, to give you an example, just a few examples, but you know, this is, if you want to know more about this, you can go down and get a copy from the finance director or the town manager of the information. But building permits are down $60,000 this year. The town clerk fees that we get, or the town clerk gets, are down $80,000, and tax revenues down about $120,000. Now, some of those might straighten themselves out before the end of the month, but that's the kind of thing we're looking at for less revenue this year. And we also have greater town expenses than planned. So the 6/11/09 official estimate from projections from Henry Centrella, the finance director, say that it's about $139,338 that were over budget on expenses. So the combination of going down on revenue and going up on expenses has not helped us this year. Now, last night, there have been a few fund transfers over the last month or so, not many, small potatoes really. But there was a meeting of the Board of Selectmen on Tuesday, June 23rd, that was last night, 2009, to discuss and approve some fiscal 2008-2009 budget transfers, mainly from the police department, to move money from other areas in the police department to cover the huge overtime overrun we have of about $128,000. So that was pretty well done. I think there was like $18,000 or $19,000 that they couldn't move, and that'll have to be made up from other sources, and that's in the documents. So they were mainly in the police department. There were a couple from the town clerk's office and a few other places, the assessor's office or something, but they were peanuts compared to this big one for the police department. This meeting that I'm going to talk about tonight, and pay attention here, was very interesting to say the least. And if you don't believe what I'm going to be going over tonight, just watch it, 9 o'clock, Saturday morning, Channel 13 for 40 minutes or so, and you can see everything for yourself. The town manager was absent for undisclosed personal reasons, and that's admissible. There was no advance notice, so we don't really know why he was absent, but I'm sure he had good reason, or he would have been there. It's a very important meeting. So the mayor conducted the meeting, and the meeting went very well, with the exceptions I will talk about tonight. I will discuss this peculiar but very taxpayer-positive meeting in detail tonight. The meeting once again proved that the well-prepared businessmen, and there are 5 of them in the selectmen, and plus the town manager, that's 6, are resolving this budget problem, 2008-2009, with everything. If everything goes as estimated, no additional direct burden on the taxpayers this year, while keeping the fund balance fairly constant, if not increasing it a bit, will be the order of the day. But there's still plenty of work to do between now and the end of 3 more months. So We won't know for sure exactly where we stand, but we're getting a better idea all the time, and that's how budgets work. Remember, we talked once about these being management by objectives. You make objectives, and then manage by exception. You manage the exceptions along the way within your capability. And I've been pointing out in the past that one of the things the town manager always said here was that we were going to try to protect public safety as much as possible, even if it meant not cutting areas of the budget, because we need to have these public safety. And of course we have contracts that we have to live up to and things like that. So it was a tough budget year. It took 6 referendums to get this budget through. It was a 0 budget increase. They did the best they could. They're having a little trouble sometimes wrestling with some of the problems, but they're working on it, and over time they'll be on top of it. Now if they get voted out in November and we have a new town manager, all bets are off. Then we have to start back from either square one or from minus 1,000, something like that. So this feat has been achieved with minimum positive input and much political posturing from the minority party selectmen, in my opinion. It was mainly one of the selectmen, the other was pretty quiet, but there was a lot of pushback in this meeting, and it wasn't a very well it wasn't a good meeting, let's put it that way. It was good in its conclusion, it was good what the businessmen did, but sitting through it was very painful. And even though it only lasts that long. There will be no supplemental tax bill, as frequently rumored by the supporters of the selectmen in the minority party. And, you know, they write letters to newspapers, and they send things to the blogs, and they talk around to people, and they mention things in meetings. But that's the story there. So there will be no great impact on the fund balance, as rumored by supporters of the selectmen in the minority party. Remember, just a few weeks ago, these supporters were saying we're going to have to go out for a supplemental tax bill of $250,000 or so. We're going to have to go to get it from the taxpayers. They were going to rob the fund balance of a great deal of money, and we're going to be in deep trouble on the fund balance. And it was all negative rumor and innuendo. Well, last night brought a little of this to a head, and I'm going to go over it tonight, although it'll take about 2 or 3 more months for it to all be resolved. If things proceed as expected over the next 3 months or so, the fiscal 2008-2009 town budget numbers will be ready by mid-August 2009. According to the town financial director, who was there last night, Henry Centrella. He prepared the papers for the meeting, and he was there to answer questions and give some direction. And he was present at the meeting last night. Now, I do have copies of the handouts last night, and there is this copy of Henry's, what he did was he included in this document all the trade-offs for all these things that were moved from one part of the budget to the other, and then he balanced it so we would all have that information. And you can get a copy of that from the town manager or the financial director's office down in the town hall. It gives you all the information right there. That's what I got. That's what I made these slides up from, and that's what I used as an aide-memoire during the meeting last night. Now, as far as the fund balance analysis is concerned, there was one done on June 11th, 2009. This other document was done for the meeting last night on 6/22/2009. And that's the document I showed you. This is a fund balance document. I got some scribbling on here from last night for notes to me, which I'll go over today. But this is it. I got it in big types, so I'll take you right through this. This is the fund balance analysis, June 11th, 2009. Any questions on that? Go see the finance director, get a copy from him or the town manager, and you'll be interested to read it. But I am going to go over that tonight if time. A town meeting will be scheduled as soon as possible after that. That's August 15th. After that information is all done, from the finance director. to discuss the budget details and to request approval to use money from a most probably increased fund balance to pay for the $267,970 in under budget revenue, and that's $126,700, and over budget $141,270. Expenditures during 2008-2009. Thanks to the businessmen, and by the way, those are just projections. On August 15th, we might find different numbers there. There was a projection done for last night's meeting on the expense side, but it was less than what I had here, so I didn't bother to plunk it in there. But $2,000 or $2 difference, but it's peanuts really, what we're talking about here. So expenses during 2008-2009, thanks to the businessmen for apparently continuing to do their pre-meeting homework. It was very obvious. They did a lot of homework before this meeting. And surprisingly, they remembered a lot that has happened over the almost 2 years in the selectmen meetings, both the regular selectmen meetings and the special selectmen meetings. And they had read the contracts, and they had read documents, so they were very well prepared. They did their homework, and they seemed to remember things that others couldn't seem to remember discussing over the year and a half. And I say, this is Brian's opinion, shame on the minority selectmen for once again apparently not doing their pre-meeting homework. I've talked about this for almost 2 years now, and I just keep repeating it, and all you have to do is watch these programs, and you'll see where people haven't. It's very obvious where they probably, can never say they didn't do their homework. Maybe they did it and couldn't remember it, but it's kind of, looks like kind of maybe they're not doing it. And they don't do their pre-meeting homework in order to advance their political agenda once again. They always seem to have a political agenda. And that always seems to dominate these discussions like it did last night again, right? And instead of trying to find out how we can make everything work satisfactorily, it's almost like how can we tear things apart and prove people wrong and prove people incompetent and prove everything bad. But there was a balance there last night on this because the businessmen kept bringing up the other side of the issue, which you will see when you watch the tape. Now, as far as the fund balance analysis is concerned, it was done on June 11th, 2009, and we're already up to the 24th, so it's a little bit out of date. But you know, it takes a while to do these things. You can't do them every day. So the fund balance as of June 30th, 2008, unaudited. They had an audited piece too, but it was small, so I'm using this unaudited piece, which is where most of the information was. Reserved for encumbrances on June 30th, 2008 was $78,333. That means we've already encumbered that money. We might owe it to somebody as soon as they send us their bill. So that's what we call being encumbered. So it's encumbered $78,333 of the fund balance. And for future expenditures, the finance director has set aside $204,998. Now, he doesn't do this on his own. He does this with the selectmen and the town manager and others, $204,998. And now, so these are kind of the designated parts of the fund balance, already, committed. Now, the undesignated part of the funded balance, as of that date, June 30th, 2008, was $1,032,544. That's how much we had undesignated. Now, of that, the total available for use is these two numbers plus $1,032,544, although some of it's encumbered already, is $1,237,542. And the total fund balance for June 30th, 2008 was $1,315,875. The total available for use. That means this is how much is available for use on June 30th, 2008 is $1,237,542. Further authorized uses that we've made along the way are the Main Street funding, 2007-2008 budget, minus $260,000. That's kind of on reserve for that. School projects, 2008-2009 budget, $200,000 minus. And then we had this thing that came in out of the blue called extra heart and hypertension. We've talked about on this program. They talked about it in the select. All these things have been talked about in the selectmen meeting over the 2 years, especially the last year. The heart and hypertension came in, and it cost us $124,691. So you got another minus here. So the total uses are $584,691 here, and so the amount available prior to the 08-09 budget operations. So it was available here at the beginning of this year prior to our budget operations was $652,851. That's a very important number, $652,851. Now, when we did our budget, that's how much was available when we did our budget in the fund balance. The budgeted expenditures and revenues for 2008 when we did our budget were $31,619,342. The fund's balance as a percentage of expenditures and revenues at that time was 2.06%. Now, I'll just say a little about this. I'm not an expert on it. You can talk to Henry Centrella about it if you want more information. But there are people, bond experts and different state people that say this should be about 5%. So, it should be double what it is now. This is 2.06, so more than double to get to 5%. Well, in order to do that, you have to raise taxes or get some revenue into town to put into the fund balance. So there's a very, very difficult thing adding to that fund balance. Easy to take, tough to add. So 2008-2009 funding issues, and there's a footnote, which I'll go over later, number 1, 2008-2009 funding issues, estimate as of June 11th, 2009, were $267,970 minus $267,970 dollars. So the net available in the this is June 11th now, 2009. Remember, the other numbers were from June 30th, 2008, the end of the last fiscal year. So the net available in the fund balance would be $384,881. And then there was a fund transfer a few weeks back, approved by the Selectmen, Board of Selectmen, for the Registrar of Voters, which needed $5,445 from the fund balance. So there's a minus 5,445, which left us with $379,436 net available after this year's transfers. Now, as far as the footnote is concerned, that's a very important number. We'll use that in some further calculations here. The footnote that he had to break down this $267,970 was revenue issues under budget, $126,700, and expense issues over budget, $141,270 for $267,970. So that's a minus $267,970. We're in trouble on our 08-09 budget. Now, what came out last night very loud and clear when as we discussed with the businessmen and mainly the businessmen and the finance director, was there are possible additions this year to the fund balance. And these possible additions, they may not happen, but they're pretty likely to happen eventually. We're going to start out, first of all, with what I said was there back here, and that was in the fund balance, $379,436, after we took into consideration the overages, the less revenue and more expenses for this year, 0809. We would have, if that happened the way it was estimated, we would have $379,436 in the fund balance. Now, there's a possibility, a strong possibility, as a matter of fact, I think it's already happened yesterday, that the Board of Education will issue into the general fund the amount of $107,000 out of the district student savings. Now, this is a great thing that's been done by the Board of Education. They've actually taken some people, children that were out of district, moved them into district, and I guess as a result of not having to bus them and do separate things, or maybe merge buses or whatever, I don't know all the details there. Get a hold of the superintendent of schools if you're interested in exactly what happened there. But we, the town, and the Board of Education saved $107,000. So if we take $379,436 and we add $107,000 to it, we end up with plus $436,436. It's a funny looking number. I hope I didn't make a mistake, but it's probably right. Now, also, when we went out to bid for the Pearson OCR ADA complaints, our contracts came in, let's say, 55 or 60% of what we thought they were going to do. The low bidders bid way under what we thought they were going to bid. So we had money set aside that we're going to take from the fund balance, that we don't need to take so much from the fund balance, providing everything goes according to plan. Now, I do want to point out one thing that at least one or two of the selectmen weren't aware of last night. There is in the contract, and by the way, I read the contract months ago. I attended some of the meetings where I attended the bid meeting. 13 bidders were there, the mayor and the purchasing agent from the town hall, and all kinds of people were down there, and people from the OCR, the school building committee, were there as well. So we've known all along about this. There's $25,000 set aside in that contract for contingency. So there's some money in there. Now, it may not end up being exactly what these numbers are, but for the purposes last night, they were talking about, so we're probably going to save about $100,000. We won't have to take it out of the fund balance because we won't be spending it. So that adds $100,000 to that fund balance number, and now we're up to $586,436. Now there's other the Pearson other money we might get from Pearson work, various Pearson works, about a 60% return back from the state. I don't know all the details on this. Again, if you want to know, you contact the finance director or the finance director of the school system or the superintendent of schools. Talk to them a bit about that, or contact Jay Case, who is the head of the chairman of the school building committee, and you can get more details. But that could add up to be another $150,000. So if that turns out to be true, we'll be ahead of where we started the year last year at, this year at. We'd be at $736,436. Now this might not all come in right away, but we do think the OCR work will be done probably by the time we go to referendum, and certainly by the time we go to the budget meeting, town budget meeting, and the referendum, because we have to give time once we do the work. If the town indeed gets it done by August 15th, then you got to give a week or two's notice to set up the meeting, town meeting, and advertise it and everything. Then you got to have another week or two for the referendum, but they're going to try to make that all happen as fast as they can. Now, there are also monies owed to our town, accounts receivable. And I'll give you just a couple examples. There are probably 30 or 40 of these things. some maybe not amounting to too much. Of course, there's always a great percentage of taxes owed to the town. I mean, too big for maybe 1 to 3% of taxes aren't collected each year. And they keep trying to do better, but they, so there's money there. But the oil tank, remember the oil tank? Way back, you who are old enough to remember it? Well, we've got money coming back from that. The Hinsdale kitchen, remember when the Hinsdale kitchen was fixed years ago? And all these things here that are on the list, and I don't have the whole list, add up, perhaps they're estimated to be, not by the town, but by some of the businessmen, about $50,000 to $100,000. So there is the possibility to yet again add to this number. So I wanted to make that very clear to you, that there are possibilities here when we go to the town budget meeting and referendum to have to take very little out of the fund balance, because a lot more money is going to be put into the fund balance. You'll still have to take out all the money that you're over budget, but it'll be less of an impact to everybody because the difference between the money coming in and the money going out will be very, very close, like $50,000, $60,000. So things aren't anywhere near as bad as they've been portrayed by the supporters of the minority over the last month or two, and all this pre-election rhetoric that's happening throughout the town and throughout our, through the papers, through surrounding towns. Okay, now I want to talk a bit about the meeting itself. Now, I want to say here that normally I don't talk about the meetings in this way. I used to when I first started, but people said, Brian, we understand that. You don't have to keep saying that. Tell us some new things. So I moved on to other things. But now getting close to the election, I thought that I better probably give you a little of my personal advice from having spent the time in this meeting. And I do spend a lot of time in meetings and watching a lot of these TV programs. But anyway, the meeting last night, I attended the entire public meeting last night. And I read the reviews of it in the paper this morning, both the Republican, which had a very positive article, and the Torrington Register, which had kind of a mixed article. I'm not even sure all the facts were right in that one, but they tried their best. So that's what happened there. But I was there in person. I saw it, and I'll be reviewing it again when it's on TV, and probably taping it, and maybe even show parts of it on this program later, if legally possible. If it's not legally possible, I won't do it. I do know that the town clerk said that she would like to have a copy of the video for the town record, because we were in a room that didn't have a recording device, and they couldn't record the official meeting like they usually do. So there was a bit of a problem with that. But see the meeting yourself. Don't just listen to Brian. I'm just here to coach a little bit and to pass on some of my experience and to get you interested in paying more attention yourself. But see the meeting for yourself Saturday morning, 9 a.m., Channel 13. If the private videotape is broadcast, which I'm told it will be, unless it's yanked for some reason, one or more times on Channel 13. Often they do show this program 3 times. And we are kind of in debt to the people who take these videos. They're done by private parties for their own good. But they do benefit everybody, because when you see one of these, even though they're trying to sell you something, when they show you these videos, you see the other side of the situation as well. So everybody benefits by seeing these videotapes that are shown on Channel 13, and we thank them for allowing us to do that. And if you want to know when else they may be shown, do like I do. Just call the channel down here, Charter Communication, and ask them for details. And in some cases, if they're not too busy, and you ask them to show a program on Channel 15 or 13 at certain times, with their slow times, they might even do that for you. The businessmen last night, in my opinion, were prepared, as always, and led the positive parts of the discussion. Every time I go to one of these meetings, the businessmen are leading the positive parts of this discussion. And usually the minorities trying to tear their arguments apart. To a certain extent, that's okay. The way they do it is, my opinion, not always okay. It's not always seems to be in a very professional, positive manner. It seems to be more in a destructive, confrontational manner. Now, I'm not saying Republicans don't do that once in a while, too. But I think in the majority, over the last year or two, it's been the minority. And I remember the Republicans when they were in the minority, and I don't think it was as confrontational at that time. And you can go back. The town hall has all these historical videos of all these programs. I think they keep them here for a year or so, but before a year, you have to go down to the town hall, town manager, secretary, and she can get you some of these old videos of the last Board of Selectmen, and you can watch them for yourself to see how the Republicans and the combined minority of the Winchester Party and Democrats behaved in those meetings. And you remember, we weren't too happy with that. That's why, one of the reasons why the businessmen won by a hefty majority of seats in the last election. All seven selectmen, and I'm just paraphrasing here, they didn't agree on everything, but they agreed that some parts of the budgeting and reporting process that we have, especially in the insurance area and some areas like that, have been flawed for many years. People try to blame this town manager, the last town manager, the one before that, but in actual fact, it came out, you can see this in the video when you watch it, that this has been going on for many years. We've had this problems with this budgeting, and we've been transferring money in the last 2 months, especially in June and the last few weeks of June, for years and years and years. It's not something that's happening only this year. It's just that people would like you to think that that's happening. Okay, so, but this happens in business too. The more information you get, the later in the year you go. And I think they made a brilliant decision when they decided last night to wait until August 15, when Henry Centrell and the auditors had all the proper information for them for this year, and 2008, 2009, and then they could make the decision. They could go and have one referendum, and they could have one town meeting, and wouldn't have to have two of each, which costs money and take time. So it'd be kind of silly to go out now and have a town meeting and a referendum and then go back again on August 15th. Doesn't make much sense at all. And it isn't constructive. It wouldn't help anything. It would just divert attention for a few more months. And that's something we don't want to do. Okay, so these have been flawed for years, and a constructive charter change may be required in some cases. This is discussed on the videotape, I hope, and it's, I don't think anything's been edited out of there, but I don't know. I'll check it myself. And this wasn't me talking here. This was the seven selectmen talking amongst themselves, and they kind of agreed on that. Okay, now I'm going to talk. I usually don't like to talk. I usually and will for the rest of until unless the election, as long as I'm around. I like to talk about who to vote for and who has the qualifications rather than who to vote against. And last year I didn't tell you I didn't name any names about who to vote against. I just list them off my list of preferred candidates. I'll have a preferred list of candidates again this year. It will cross parties, independents, Democrats, Republicans, petitioners, whatever happens, whatever is put up on the plate by these party leaders and by petitioners and by any other group, taxpayer association, whatever, I will look at the relative merits of all of them, and then I'll try to make up a list that is the best people for their job, regardless of affiliation. As you know, I myself, although often accused otherwise, am unaffiliated, have been for quite a while. So now I do want to say that in the meeting last night, I was kind of appalled once again by Minority Selectman Perez, as she did not seem well prepared. Now, I do remember reading in the paper, and I can find a copy of it down in the morgue of either of the libraries, that when they asked her what she thought her weak point was when she was running for office 2 years ago, and she said, well, I don't always seem to have enough time. I wish I had more time. Something to that effect. Those aren't the exact words, but I'll find that, and I'll read it to you sometime between now and the election. And I kind of agree with her, because she never seems to be well prepared. And last night was a perfect example of that, and I'll give you some examples right now that you can see for yourself on the video, Saturday morning, 9 o'clock, Channel 13. She did not know that there was more than one budget meeting for the fiscal 9-10 budget. That amazes me, because I attended all the meetings, and I know there were more than one. And I asked the other people, and they said yes. But I think she missed one or two of them. and went to maybe 1 of 3, something like that. So that was the first problem. And when you have a selectman that doesn't remember how many budget meetings there were for a very important thing like our budget, that's not good. She did not seem to have read the contract for the Pearson OCR fixes. I can't guarantee she didn't read it. She might have read it and didn't remember any of it. But she asked for a copy of it last night and seemed to be unaware that the bid came in way under budget, even though we've talked about it in selectmen meetings along the way. Jay Case has talked about it in public comment down there and in reports. And I've had it on this program for at least a couple of months that we're going to be way under budget here. The bids came in low, and there was a possibility not to spend quite a bit of money from the fund balance because we're going to be way under budget thanks to the recession. There's many bad things that it does. This is one of the good things. So she didn't seem to have read this contract and seemed to be unaware that the bid came in way under budget, even though it was discussed on this program many times and in the selectmen meetings. She was also unaware of the $25,000 or so contingency in the Pearson OCR contract. There's a contingency in there. So they spent a lot of time at this meeting last night talking about contingency. And we knew there was a contingency. I think Selectman Ham mentioned $23,000, so it's in that neighborhood. I think it's $25,000, so I'll have to go back and read the contract. But it's there. It's in the Pearson OCR contract. So there's a chance we can save even some more money here if we don't need to use the contingency. But there's also a good chance we will have to use some of the contingency. It's, as I always tell people, if you're digging in your yard and you get a contractor to do it, and he's always going to say, well, if I strike ledge, it's going to be more money. Or if I hit an underground spring, it's going to be more money. Or there's contamination under there, it's going to be more money. We won't know till we get there and see what the problem is, and then we'll tell you. So that's a gamble that we take, and that could happen at Pearson. Let's hope not. We think the due diligence has been done. There have been various people going through there, different committees, different commissions, and they seem to know what they're doing. But nothing is finite. She seemed unaware of the last 2 years' continuous activity by the town manager and the police chief to fix the overtime budget problem in the police department. Now, personally, I've heard so much of it over the last 2 years, I'm sick of it. We know what's happening in the police department. They were short of people in the police department. They had to go out and hire some more. That takes time. I went to one of the police meetings last year. It takes a year almost from starting to hire a new police person to getting them productive in the environment, because they have to be hired. They have to go through all kinds of background checks. They have to go to training schools. There's all kinds of things that have to happen, but we all know that. So the police department is trying to, and then sometimes when you hire somebody, they get all the way through training, and after a year, they quit, and they leave. And it's hard to stop them from doing that. So there are a myriad of problems in there, but the police chief is still trying to fix those problems, and she should be very aware of those, because everybody else knows them, knows exactly what's happened down there. It hasn't been a secret. It's been discussed in a lot of meetings, and I've even seen the police chief in the meetings talking about this issue. Comes up at every budget meeting, that's for sure. She had other misunderstandings. I can't remember each one. They're on the tape. You'll see them. But they were cleared up right on the spot by the financial director during the meeting. Now, lastly, and for my list, and probably a bigger list, but I didn't remember them all. I got to see the video, and then I'll write them up. But she wanted to go to the town meeting before all of the required information is obtained and the selectmen and town manager are properly prepared. Now, businessmen don't do that kind of thing. You try to get the information. You try to make sure everybody agrees it's the correct information. If you have to wait till August 15th to get it, you wait. And then you go with the proper information to the town meeting, and you don't say, oh, we're probably going to have to come back again in another month and go through the whole process again. That's foolish. That's not very businesslike. So that was something that neither of the minority agreed that we should do. They thought we should go and have a meeting and have a referendum, and then perhaps have to go back again for another one. So to me, kind of silly and very unbusinesslike. So now this is the second thing we've had in a row here. First, people said, well, we want to turn the budget down because, and I don't think these minority selectmen said that, but a lot of their supporters did. Let's turn the budget down because the state hasn't made up its mind yet. They're still 2 months away from making up their mind. And again, 70% of the state, towns, and cities went ahead and approved their budgets, and they're getting on with work. And if something comes up by exception from the state, they'll have to deal with that. And we won't know that until something comes up. Then we'll know what we have to deal with, and we can deal with it. But it doesn't do any good to speculate what's going to happen there. This selectman's conduct, in my opinion, was again adversarial and not constructive in general. I did not vote for her last time for many reasons, mainly because she's an educator, and I think she should spend all her time with the school, especially when she says she needs more time to do things in the paper, if she was quoted correctly, which she might not have been. But I did not vote for her last time for many reasons, and was willing to reluctantly give her the benefit of the doubt this time in an attempt to promote some consistency in our government, in the town manager, in the town of Winchester for the next 2 years. So that's what we need. But, as they say in business, enough is enough. And I will encourage others to watch the selectmen meetings. They're on TV every time they have one, and consider very carefully before voting for this selectman in November. Do we want her to be mayor? If you watch enough of the meetings that happened over the last year, year and a half, I don't think you're going to say, we'd really like her to be mayor, although you might. That's your prerogative. But I would say, go ahead and watch the meetings. Go down to town hall and get some copies of them, watch them, and see if you think she will do a better job than the existing mayor that we have now. I don't think so. But it is possible that if she gets enough votes in the next election, she might be mayor, and that to me is very scary. Let's get some candidates who can work together, despite philosophical differences. And from what I hear when I talk to people around town, a lot of others kind of feel the same way that I do. That let's stop the antagonism. Let's stop the politics in these meetings. And let's get on with the job. Let's work together. And I know the EDC professes that policy. I profess that policy. And a lot of people out there feel the same way. And I think that this selectman may be overworked, maybe not, but I think so, and should probably devote more time to her profession and leave the selectman duties to those who can possibly devote more time to doing the homework and interpersonal effort that's necessary to participate more constructively in the meetings. For example, by going down and getting the contract and reading it without being spoon-fed by anybody else. That's what I do. I just go down and get copies when I know they're available and I read them. And then I can talk about them intelligently, and sometimes maybe not too intelligently, but that's your opinion. I think that people feel intimidated by this selectman and may not want to run for the Board of Selectmen as a result. Both parties are having a hard time finding people to run for the election. A lot of people don't want to be involved because of their business and because of family reasons and all. But there are a bunch of people that are intimidated by the conduct at these meetings, and they might not want to run for any of these boards, either selectmen or any other board, as a result making it harder for each party to find qualified candidates. I know, I can tell you, I wouldn't personally, I've been asked many times, both last election and this election, to run for selectmen. I say, do you really want to sit there every 2 weeks and go through that harangue that they do there? That's not really good. And I think that this is, what I've seen the last 2 years, this is where the majority of the problem is. Voters, please think about this long and hard before you cast your vote. Now, I'm just going to quickly go through 2 quick slides, which are, by the way, I'm not going to keep, that's all I'm going to say about that subject. You have to all think for yourselves. I'll be more positive. Once people start announcing their candidates, then I will tell you who I think can help this town, and then you do or don't have to listen to it, whatever you want to do. You have to live in it. It's your town, your children, grandmothers, and your grandchildren, etc. For now, 2009-10 budget, the state has not completed its budget yet, so the total ramifications of their budget on our town and personal budgets has not been determined. But known information has already been incorporated into our town budget. So whatever we know that the state's going to do, we've incorporated. With that, I'm going to say thank you very much. I'll see you next week, when there'll be even less time between then and the next election on November 3rd, 2009. Thank you.